I believe that the best way to support our men and women in uniform is to never send them into wars or occupations started on false pretenses. When they must serve in harm's way, to give them the very best support, to provide their families with the support and the services that they need to ease the hardship of a parent or a spouse being taken away from the family, to help them when they come back, to give them all the medical care they need for injuries, whether they're physical or psychological, and to help them in the transition from military life back into civilian life. On the issue of veterans, Lieutenant Governor Garamendi has mentioned that Dan Lundgren, while criticizing me in a hit mailer for not supporting our troops, got a 0% rating from disabled veterans in 2005, got a grade D from Iraq and Afghanistan veterans in 2006. He's almost entirely avoided debating me here in 2008, but we did debate in Elk Grove in 2006. That debate's on our website, and we talked about the issue of veterans. I argued back then that veterans need better services. They need better health care. We need to expedite the process for the transition into civilian life, for documenting and compensating them for service-related injuries and disabilities. Lundgren argued that the status quo was okay. I still think we need to provide much better services for our veterans and certainly give our men and women in uniform all the support that they need. I'm going to talk a little now about the so-called war on terrorism. We all agree that the September 11th terrorist attacks were a tremendous tragedy. It was a mass murder, though. It was not an act of war. The September 11th terrorist attacks were committed by 19 men armed only with box cutters and a fiendish plan. None of the 19 September 11th terrorists were from Iraq or from Afghanistan. Yet in response to the September 11th terrorist attacks, we've engaged in the largest military buildup since World War II, and we've invaded and are now occupying two countries that never attacked us. The September 11th terrorist attacks, the September 11th terrorists got their training not in Afghanistan, they got their training to fly those airplanes in Florida. I am the past president of the Sacramento chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility, and following the September 11th terrorist attacks, Physicians for Social Responsibility developed what they called the SMART security platform. SMART standing for Sensible Multilateral American Response to Terrorism. The SMART security platform stressed the fact that conventional military force historically has not been effective in combating terrorism. Instead, what we should have done was to cooperate with the rest of the world in intelligence gathering, in police work, in addressing the root causes of terrorism. On September the 12th, as much a tragedy as September the 11th was, we had a tremendous opportunity because on September the 12th, 2001, virtually the entire world was in sympathy with the United States. Yasser Arafat, who is the head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was donating blood for the victims of September the 11th. The people of Iran were holding a candlelight vigil in sympathy with the United States in their capital city of Tehran. We could have gone on September the 12th to the rest of the world and said, we will seek security, we will seek justice, but we will not seek revenge. We could have gone to the Muslim community internationally and said, help us find the perpetrators of this attack. We could have adopted this SMART security approach, the Sensible Multilateral American Response to Terrorism. Had we adopted SMART security, I think it's safe to predict that Osama bin Laden and the other perpetrators of the September 11th terrorist attacks who are still at large would now be in captivity. Had we adopted the SMART security approach, more than 4,600 U.S. soldiers who are now dead would be alive. More than 30,000 U.S. soldiers who are physically wounded, hundreds of thousands more who have had psychological injuries that they'll have to deal with the rest of their life would not bear the scars of war. Untold number of innocent Iraqi and Afghanistan people would still be alive. We would be $3 trillion richer, and we would be safer from terrorism had we adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. We have not adopted the SMART security approach. But unfortunately, we have not. Instead of smart security, though, we embarked on what PSR unofficially calls the dumb security approach: dangerous, unilateral, militaristic, and belligerent. Historically, it's known that conventional military force is not effective in combating terrorism. That is not just my opinion. A retired admiral, Jean LaRocque, said, "You can't wage war against an ism." Former National Security Administration Director and General William Odom said, "Who benefited from the invasion of Iraq? Al-Qaeda and Iran, and that remains true every day that our troops remain there." The RAND Corporation just did a study and concluded that our military operation and occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan is making us less safe, not more safe, from terrorism. 80% of terrorist experts surveyed by Foreign Policy magazine agree that the military approach is making us less safe, not more safe. Even General David Petraeus, when he was asked by Republican Senator John Warner, "Is our military presence in Iraq making us safer from terrorism?" he said, "Sir, I don't really know." And on top of that, in March of 2007, he said, "There is no military solution to a problem like that in Iraq." Well, if there's no military solution to a problem like that in Iraq and Afghanistan, we have no business sending our patriotic young men and women to risk their lives there. That's why I've always supported the smart security approach. As a combat Marine Corps veteran of Vietnam, I support the sacrifices our troops are making, but I do not support sacrificing our troops, sending them into wars and occupations started on false pretenses. As a congressman, I will vote for all the support. I will vote for increased support for our troops, for better protective equipment, for better services to our veterans. But I will not vote for further funding for offensive U.S. military operations in Iraq and Afghanistan that are not tied to a prompt, orderly, and complete withdrawal of U.S. troops from those countries and to replacement of U.S. troops with a truly international peacekeeping force. We are currently spending $200,000 a minute on the more than $200,000 a minute on the occupations in Iraq and Afghanistan. And even before Iraq and Afghanistan, the United States was spending as much on its military as the next 10 militarized countries of the world combined. You know, when President Eisenhower, Republican president who was the Supreme Allied Commander in World War II, stepped down after his second term of office in 1961, he warned us about the potential for what he called a disastrous influence on our democracy of the rising military-industrial complex. When we're spending as much on our military, on war and preparation for war, as the next 10 militarized countries of the world combined, that cannot be construed as defense. That is the war profiteering that Dwight Eisenhower warned us about. We need to stop wasting vast amounts of human resources on war and preparation for war, and instead bring back those human and financial resources to meet the needs of our own people, including rebuilding our own economy and our crumbling infrastructure. I'm going to conclude with a quotation from that famous American philosopher, Woody Allen. Woody Allen said, "More than any other time in history, we stand at a crossroads. One path leads to utter hopelessness and despair, the other to total extinction. Let us pray that we have the wisdom to choose correctly." Well, I'm running for Congress because I know that there is a third path. There is a path to peace and prosperity. There's a path to restoring our standing with the rest of the world, to returning to the principles upon which our country was founded. There's a path to taking back our democracy from the special interests that career politicians like Dan Lundgren represent, and to restoring government of, by, and for the people of the United States, the people like those of us gathered today. I'm running for Congress to offer people a choice to to embark on that much better path. And to paraphrase Woody Allen, let us hope that the voters of the 3rd Congressional District have the wisdom to make the right choice. Thank you all very much.